Hello and welcome to Chopper's Election Podcast. I'm Christopher Hope, the Telegraph's chief political correspondent. Today I've left the Red Lion pub on Whitehall and come to the Old Swan pub in Dudley in the West Midlands, a Labour seat the Tories have to win to secure the party's majority on December the 12th election day. My guest today is Priti Patel, who's been Home Secretary for the past 100 days after being appointed to that role by Boris Johnson. The last time Priti was on this podcast, it was to talk about her admiration for former Tory PM Margaret Thatcher. And since then, of course, Boris Johnson has called his general election, and now we are watching a campaign play out which for me has many of the echoes of Mrs Thatcher's battle with Michael Foot in the 1983 election. It remains to be seen, of course, whether Boris Johnson, like Margaret Thatcher, can win a landslide majority. Now, before I met up with Priti Patel, I bumped into Mike Wood and Marco Longhi, who are the candidates for Dudley South and Dudley North, respectively, in a local park, where they were talking to Priti Patel about concerns about travellers moving onto public land. So I'm now in this park with Mike Wood, and you're candidate for Dudley South, Mike, for the Tory party.
Yes, standing for re-election, 4.5 years in, which of course in the current climate makes me a veteran.
Yes. And you can win?
Yes, I mean the responses, we always say the response is particularly good, but I think genuinely we've been really, really happy with the response on the doorstep. And as long as people turn out and vote on 12th of December, I think we should be fine, not only here in Dudley South, but also around the Black Country.
You've lost your Brexit Party opponent, haven't you, which must be a relief?
Yeah, well, my Brexit Party my Brexit Party opponent, who had been my UKIP opponent in 2015 and the UKIP group leader, he dropped out the race, joined the Conservative Party, endorsed my campaign because he knew that I'd been working hard to secure Brexit, to deliver Brexit, and the only way that it was actually going to happen was with a majority Conservative government. And the best way of doing that was to support me and make sure I'm the Member of Parliament.
What are you finding on the doorstep in your campaign? Are you finding that people are moving towards the Tories now in your seat?
Yes, we're finding a lot of lifelong Labour voters who, partly because of Brexit and being appalled by the stance that the party nationally is taking in not respecting the result that 7 out of 10 voters here in Dudley South took in that referendum, but also a strong hostility to Jeremy Corbyn and people who've been in the Labour Party for decades, who voted Labour in every election since 1951, saying they just can't vote, they can't place their vote that would risk putting Jeremy Corbyn into Downing Street.
What was your majority in the last election, Mike?
It was 7,000 and something last time round, so it was up a bit from 2015.
So you're pretty certain you're going to get through on December the 12th?
Well, and we can never take these things for granted, but yes, I'm very happy with the support I'm getting on the doorstep.
Mike Wood, thanks so much, and good luck in the election.
Thanks so much, Chris.
I'm now with Marco Longhi, the Tory candidate for Dudley North, and how tight is this seat, Marco?
Oh, gosh, 22 votes in it at the last election, so...
That was Ian Austin over the nearest Tory challenger.
Correct, yes. So he was standing for the Labour Party at the time, and we know that since then, Ian has decided to stand down and is advising Labour voters in Dudley North to vote Conservative.
Is that having an impact in terms of the support for you?
Yes, I do believe it is. Initially, I was happy for Ian to stand because I knew Corbyn was going to be putting forward a Labour candidate against him since he moved to independent status. But actually, I thought, that would split the vote. But since then, all the hundreds of doors I've been knocking, and a lot of respect for Ian. He's been a good MP for the area. I actually think that he was probably going to be splitting my vote, Brexit vote, and a lot of people are now being persuaded by his message.
Is he out campaigning for you?
I think Ian is probably looking at, he's obviously ending his term as Member of Parliament and he's doing what he's doing. We haven't really kept that much in touch since his announcement, but I do know that he is determined that I win the seat, and what obviously was very beneficial to me as well was the fact that Rupert Lowe for the Brexit Party decided to stand down at the very last minute.
Despite not having to, because it's not a Tory seat. Because Nigel Farage said stand down in Tory
Yeah.
seats only to Brexit Party candidates.
I mean, I know for certain that Ian did, and he's made comments to that effect. He says, Marco, I've checked you out. You're a good guy. You're a man of the people. And I suspect that perhaps Rupert checked out my Brexit credentials as well. And he knows that I will be absolutely behind Boris, making sure that we get Brexit done.
What did you vote for in 2016 on the referendum?
Oh, gosh, I led the Vote Leave campaign on my own patch, where I am still a elected member for the council in Walsall. And obviously I voted Leave, and I wanted us to leave on the 29th of March. So I was one of the people less happy with the fact that we were extending and then extending again. So yes, I'm 100% behind Boris. We've got to get this sorted for everybody. It's about democracy, isn't it?
How are you finding Jeremy Corbyn goes down on the doorstep, Marco Longhi?
Terribly. I mean, for me, it's great because people are rejecting him. I have die-hard Labour voters who say to me, Marco, we have voted Labour all our lives. My parents, my grandparents. We just cannot vote for Jeremy Corbyn.
And can Boris Johnson capitalise on that disenchantment?
Without a doubt. And he can capitalise not just because people are rejecting his extreme socialist, demi-Marxist policies, but actually the dither and confusion over his stand on Brexit, which is, as you know, to try and get another deal, whilst many of his cabinet have gone on record saying that once they've got this great new deal out of the EU, they're actually going to campaign against it. So, yeah, I mean, it's just utter confusion from the Labour side. So I know many a good person in the Labour Party who are just totally devastated by the state of play in their own party.
Marco Longhi, just finally, what are your odds on winning if you were putting a...
I am just not going to go down that territory. I'm not going to go down that route. I'm just going to knock on as many doors as I can with a positive message.
Marco Longhi, Tory candidate for Dudley North, thank you very much for coming on Chopper's Election Podcast.
Thank you very much.
Right, back in the warmth of the Swan pub in Dudley, and with me now is Priti Patel, the Home Secretary. We're waiting for our lunch, Priti, aren't we?
We're here in Dudley today.
Here in Dudley. We're at the edge of the red wall, aren't we? We're like in the Game of Thrones, looking into this frozen waste. It's so cold outside, but it's a beautiful place, but it's just cold, isn't it?
Fantastic part of the country, effectively, but also an area that I know from my time on Vote Leave as well, when I came to campaign in the referendum. And the point about being here today is obviously, we're in the general election campaign, but this part of the country voted to leave. And because of the way Labour and the opposition has behaved in Parliament, they've effectively denied the public here their vote and their voice by blocking Brexit at every single stage. And when I speak to the candidates here, when I've spoken to councillors here, and obviously members of the public too, that's what they're saying. They want to get Brexit done. They want to get Parliament working again, because Parliament has not been working. They want to see a Parliament delivering for the public and for them, but also they want to, as Boris says, unleash the great potential of our country so that we can move forward.
As that came up on the doorstep, is Brexit the big issue? Is it the Brexit election still? The big concern for you guys was it would fall down the issue of importance, and then transport, health, schools, everything else become more important.
Chopper, it's incredible actually. So for the past 3 weeks, wherever I have been, it's pretty clear this is the biggest issue of the day, politically and in a generation. And on the doors that I have been knocking on across the country, I've been to many, many constituencies, including quite a few Labour-held constituencies. People say on the doorstep that their MP deliberately voted to block Brexit, stop Brexit, deny democracy. People are frustrated. They don't speak very highly, actually, about the conduct of politicians and politics right now. They feel that the guts has been kicked out of it all, that the trust has gone away. And so they now are looking to the leadership of the Conservative Party under Boris. They want to get behind him because they know that he will get Brexit done. And the fact of the matter is, we want it done. We've been saying this, but we've been stopped at every single avenue when it comes to moving forward.
And we're here in Dudley North, but of course Ian Austin held a seat just narrowly at last election. He's now not standing. Someone else is. Marco Longhi is a Tory candidate. Can you take this one? Is it in?
Well, I know.
You've got to, haven't you?
So Marco and the team have been working assiduously, incredibly hard, to earn the trust and to earn votes. And that's the point. You can take nothing for granted. That is a very, very big contrast to what we see, obviously, with the Labour Party. And obviously, I've seen here and I've heard here directly, people are saying it's time for a change. They want the country to move forward. They want to get Brexit done, obviously, but they want a voice in Parliament that's going to represent them.
Do you worry the polls are narrowing? We saw it yesterday, didn't we? Tories down 2, Labour up 1 in a couple of polls. Do you think that might be a trend?
Well, look, I think, we're in a general election campaign. Opinion polls do what they do. But I work on the basis, I've been a grassroots activist in my party for 30 years. So, OK, I've been around a while. But, at the end of the day, our job in a general election is to earn respect, be very humble in going out and campaigning, which we all do with a great deal of humility. I say this as someone that's been a member of Parliament for 9 years. What a privilege to be elected and to do the job of representation. It's no different here as well. Marco's working incredibly hard. All our candidates are working incredibly hard. Every constituency that I've been to, I see our candidates working to earn the trust, working to earn support and working to earn the vote. We take nothing for granted and we will continue to work incredibly hard.
What's your key
for the
to
remainder of
campaigning?
the campaign.
What's your key to campaigning?
The key to campaigning is actually being who you are, standing up for what you believe in. And I see that through all our brilliant candidates, actually. It's been incredibly humbling. Seeing first-time candidates, obviously, campaigning with them.
How many seats have you been to so far?
I've been to nearly 30 constituencies. And
in the past week?
I'm going to tell you a story. I mean, last week I was in Cumbria, where at one point I thought I'd seen more sheep than people. But at the same time, I've been up to Carlisle. I've been over to Ashfield. I've been over to Bolsover, to Bassetlaw, Labour heartlands where people are saying they want to get Brexit
It's
done.
a campaign being fought in the north, isn't it, really? It
I
feels
think,
that way
it's
because
a
I'm
national
always coming
campaign.
north.
However, what is so interesting,
Yeah, of course,
in
national, but
many of these constituencies that I've been going to, we have local candidates that understand the communities that they're aspiring to represent.
Rather than
and I
dropping
think
them
that
in.
makes a really big difference. The connectivity, the way people connect. Candidates can connect. They know their local area. They know how people feel about Brexit. They know how people feel about the issues of the day. And when it comes to even my portfolio, and going back even to the referendum, we spoke about, campaigned on taking back control, money, laws, borders. That matters now. That resonates on the doorstep. And when we look at what we are doing, what I'm doing as Home Secretary, that's no different. Campaigning to take back control of our borders, absolutely. But also standing up for the hard-working, law-abiding majority.
I'm looking at the Sun newspaper here. It says there's only 32,195 seats will give Boris Johnson the majority in number 10. That's because those are the majorities you've got to turn or to hold on to some Tory seats. It's very tight, isn't it?
Well, there are a lot of swing seats out there. There's no doubt about that. And marginal constituencies. That's just a fact of life in a general election. We're hearing one of them today.
Just 12 Tory votes in this seat could give you this seat.
But we carry on
Marco
regardless,
Longhi.
and we will work incredibly hard, obviously, to earn trust and respect and to work hard in this campaign.
Do you think that Jeremy Corbyn's issue with anti-Semitism is damaging him? We're looking at the front page of the Telegraph today saying Corbyn unfit to be PM, says Chief Rabbi. Do you think it's a concern?
I think there's more than a concern, and I say this. People who know me know that I grew up with the Jewish community. I'm obviously, Indian origin myself, so from an ethnic group as well, minority. However, what we have seen in the Labour Party, none of this is new, by the way. What I thought was so extraordinary today with the Chief Rabbi's comments, they were incredibly poignant. And for a community that has been through so much, and the Chief Rabbi spoke and he wrote about this very clearly, over the last 4 years, what the Jewish community has experienced is unprecedented, where particularly when politicians have sat on their hands, closed their eyes and ears and made a conscious decision not to do anything or say anything. History shows that is absolutely, they're on the wrong side of the argument, they're completely wrong. And also they have been supporting a lot of the hatred that we have seen in our politics, but across communities. That is unacceptable. That is totally unacceptable in this day and age. And it fills me with a degree of not just despair, but a lot of sadness. I'm lucky. I grew up, in a really lovely part of Hertfordshire, alongside the Jewish community. We did not have to fear racism or hatred in a way in which communities have to now. And I find that just so distressing.
Why has he got an apparent blind spot about this problem in the party?
Well, I think he should be publicly challenged on that, and he should answer that question himself. That's a conscientious choice and decision that he has made, and with that, he is supporting intolerance, along with anti-Semitism, along with racism. And when you have the Own Equalities and Human Rights, Commission themselves, obviously, clearly now investigating the Labour Party, and the Labour Party are in denial themselves about this, with many of their own candidates still perpetrating a degree of prejudice and hate, that is simply unacceptable.
And if he becomes Prime Minister, how will the Jewish community feel? He talks here in this piece about the very soul of our nation is under question at the moment.
So the Chief Rabbi is right to say that. He's absolutely right to say that. Absolutely question, I think, think about the soul of our nation, but also the fabric of society, the values that we share, the values that we hold dear to us. I say this very personally, the values that I grew up with, of, tolerance, effectively, respect for each other. And that's
Do you think hate crime might increase if Jeremy Corbyn becomes PM?
I would dread to think. I publicly said this previously about Jeremy Corbyn and his leadership. I would fear for the country. I would fear for the country. I would fear for the security of our country. I would fear for what it means for minority communities. I would be worried, effectively, for all of us on that basis, because from my perspective, he chooses, it's a conscientious choice and decision he has made in terms of the friendships and the alliances that he has. These are not with individuals and groups and organisations that share British values. They're not the same organisations or the values that, would support British institutions. And quite frankly, many of them are the enemies of our country.
Does he like Britain, do you think, Jeremy Corbyn?
Well, I do wonder about his motivation. And, in politics in particular, I've always spoken about conviction in politics and politicians. I've spoken about very good and strong leaders in the past and what motivates them. You have to look at his track record, the type of organisations that he sides with, the type of viewpoints that he subscribes to as well. He speaks against our armed forces. His party are not on the side of law enforcement or law and order. They've never backed the police. They don't believe in empowering the police when it comes to tackling crime. They don't believe in backing the police when it comes to giving the police the powers to protect our communities on things like stop and search. That makes me wonder, and I think it should rightly make others and the members of the public wonder as well. People question, what does his compass look like? What are his priorities?
And who might come into number 10 with him? Is there concern about people around him, their security?
A range of things, actually. I think an absolute range of things. So, yes, the organisations, institutions, but the type of policies that he would subscribe to, what type of compromises would he make on our national security? What type of compromises would he make when it comes to the security of people in the community?
What's an example of that? What compromise are you thinking about?
Well, I think in terms of just the security of our country, look at the organisations, the terrorist organisations that he has subscribed to, Hamas, Hezbollah, the IRA. These are people that have undermined the very institutions and the stability of our country, and also the national security of our nation as well. But I come back to the basics across community, society, the institutions and the organisations making decisions, quite frankly, as he would have to do as Prime Minister, sitting around the National Security Council, as Boris does right now to keep our country safe. I would really fear for the type of decisions that Corbyn would be making.
You're sitting here with a well-thumbed, indexed copy of your manifesto unveiled just 3 days ago. Priti Patel, were you happy with the immigration pledge to have fewer low-skilled migrants? The net tens of thousands has gone now, hasn't it?
Of course.
Is that a worry for you?
Well, we have always been clear, obviously, my capacity as Home Secretary, working on the manifesto, working alongside the Prime Minister as well, in the run-up to the manifesto as well. We've been absolutely clear that we want to take back control of our immigration and our borders. And to do that, you've heard me say frequently, as others have as well, we will introduce an Australian-style points-based system where, yes, we want the best and the brightest to come to the United Kingdom. And, of course, with that, we want to see lower low-skilled immigration come into our country, because we believe that we can have a system that supports our economy, grows our economy by having the right talent in our country as well, and at the same time making sure that we are working to support our public services. I launched and unveiled our new fast-track NHS visa, again ensuring that we can bring doctors, nurses, allied healthcare professionals, qualified professionals come and work in our health system. We want that, and actually the British country, the public
But
want
will
this.
numbers come down?
Well, when it comes to low skills, absolutely, because this is the point. For the first time in over 30 years, in fact 40 years, we're leaving the EU, and don't forget the EU has dictated, it's controlled too much of the policies, it's effectively set the direction of travel and told us what we have to do. So free movement, we're going to end free movement when we leave the EU by bringing in a new immigration bill, new immigration act, which will set the framework for the Australian-style points-based system.
But it might go up, though. You're only saying low skill goes down.
Well, let's be clear about this. We are, first of all, best and the brightest coming to our country. We're talking about having the people with the right skills that we need in our economy. We want to stop what we've seen under free movement. So let's not forget this. This should not just be about numbers. We want to stop people that come to our country with criminal backgrounds. Under free movement, we've had no control over that whatsoever. So we're going to stop that. We're going to change that. This is about taking back control of our borders. We're going to have new systems in place where we know who's coming into our country and who's going out of the country as well. But having the best and the brightest does also mean that we have the right levers to influence the skills that we want coming into our country. High skills, yes, versus low skill. We're working with the Migration Advisory Committee as well right now. They've already been commissioned to make sure that we can
control
have that
over who
economic-
comes here, but you don't want to say now, you're not saying now that numbers will come down.
Well, we're going to work to achieve that, because let's be clear, we've commissioned the MAC. We've got to have a bill. We've got to do the immigration, the immigration bill through Parliament to set the framework. So people need to understand this. We need to have the vehicle. So next Queen's speech, immigration bill in there, absolutely. That will set the programme for the Australian-style points-based system. So if the public want control over their borders and they want a new immigration system that is an Australian-style points-based system, they need to vote for the Conservative Party, because we're the only ones that will do this. But off the back of that as well, that will set the framework, the direction of travel, to have the right people, the right skills come into our country, to make the right contributions when they come to our country as well.
As a Thatcherite Tory, are you happy about the lack of support in the tax system for higher middle earners here, not going ahead with this £50,000 increase to 80,000?
So as
a Thatcherite.
Listen, as a Conservative and as a Thatcherite Conservative as well, I'm all about making sure that people have more money in their pockets. And of course, we've seen over the last 10 years, the entire country making enormous sacrifices after we dealt with the, shambles of Labour, the economic disaster. We've gone from that to recovery and renewal, obviously, in our economy. And I'm really proud of that, actually. I just think about what we've done in terms of the economic fundamentals, but also increasing the national living wage, national minimum wage, doing much more to support hard-pressed people.
So helping everyone rather than...
Helping everyone. And right now we're at that stage where we want to make sure that we support those on the lowest incomes, make sure that they can keep, more of what they earn. So when we look at the fact that we're not going to be increasing VAT, national insurance, obviously as well, that's really important. Our national insurance cut will benefit everyone, but also particularly those on low incomes. It's right that we support them.
Is the Tory party changing, do you think? I think dropping the fox hunting pledge now is so interesting. It's moving away from its kind of, maybe its rural roots into more of a kind of mainstream... I don't know what I'm saying here, but do you know what I mean? Is it changing for the better?
Well, look, I represent a constituency that's urban, rural and coastal. So, I spend plenty of time with my rural, my farmers in particular. And increasingly, I'd say this, certainly in my time as a Member of Parliament, our discussion has been about environmental stewardship, how we do the right thing for our country, our environment, for the next generation, and that's the right thing to do. So when you look at the manifesto and you look at the work that we have been doing, obviously across the board, actually, when it comes to tackling some of the extremities of the environment, climate change, absolutely. We're the thought leaders in this. We're the ones that are absolutely...
Getting not much credit there, are you, for
putting the legislation in place, when it comes to plastics, when it comes to oceans, but when it comes to environmental stewardship as well. This is the space that we're in, and that's right that we're doing that. And if I may say so, of course, it was Margaret Thatcher that was a champion of the environment, and so we're doing that exactly again.
There's been a big row about this film called Blue Story, and it's been banned in cinemas. Would you go and see it? Have you seen it yet?
So if you can find me time to go to the movies, and I've promised my son that after the general election, I'm absolutely going to take him to the movies.
It's going to be a Tory film. It's Blue Story.
Look, I mean, I think it's a very different film.
Yes.
But I haven't seen it, and I know what's been going on there. But actually, there is a very serious point here about what happened at the weekend. You know, we've seen, sadly, a lot of young people sucked into gangs, knife crime and violence. There's now a police investigation into what happened at the weekend. Cinemas, as you know, as a dad, I know as a mum, are places where families go. So I have no doubt that what other families saw that night were pretty terrifying, actually. So
should it be banned elsewhere in
Look,
cinemas?
I think that's the choice of the cinemas themselves. But I think right now we've got to concentrate on giving the police the space to get on with the investigation that they've now got in terms of what happened. And my priority, as is the priority, after the general election, a future Conservative government, is to make sure that we do much more to tackle knife crime, gangs, serious violence, and actually with young people, give them a second chance so that we can give them the new opportunities that they desperately want.
You're a Brexiteer. Where would you put Nigel Farage in the list of Great Britons?
Well, look, I think, the debate, politics itself has changed a hell of a lot. I've been a referendum girl, as you know, for some time. I campaigned for a referendum long before...
You worked for them in the old days.
Long before many others did. So, I was really pleased to be part of that referendum movement in 2016. I desperately want us to get Brexit done. And I suspect Nigel does, along with everybody else, every other, member of the British public that voted to leave. Their frustration speaks volumes, effectively. That's what we're going to do. We're the only party in this general election that is going to get Brexit done and then transform, in terms of politics and policies and so many other areas, in terms of unleashing the potential of our country.
There's more that unites your party than divides you. If you look at who you're losing this election, Philip Hammond, David Gauke, these are Amber Rudd. They're good Tories, aren't they, really? But they've just lost the plot over Brexit, you might argue. Well,
look, I think politics has moved on and the country's moved on as well. There's a huge amount of frustration that we can't be trapped in the hamster wheel anymore of, the gridlock, the dither, the delay, just that paralysis that has dominated Parliament. We've got to cut that out. We've got to stop that now. And so to move the country forward, we've got to get Brexit done. That is what is uniting the party. And you know what? When I'm knocking on doors, that's what's uniting the country.
MPs might get a second vote before Christmas.
We have to get Brexit done. I want Brexit done by Christmas, okay, as well as getting Brexit done. And I actually think all Conservatives do, but I think the British public desperately want it done.
Are the Tories now the Brexit party, essentially?
No, we're the party for the country.
With a pressure group wing, which is called Nigel Farage's group, but you are the Brexit party.
No, absolutely not. Look, we are all about delivering for the country, without a doubt. And we're listening to the country. We hear what the public is saying about Brexit. We've heard what the public have been saying, for too long now, their frustrations about why Parliament hasn't been working for them. We can't do all the other things. My frustration, as all our frustrations when we announced the Queen's speech before the election, we wanted to get on and legislate, but of course the opposition were blocking us from doing that. So to make Parliament work for the country, we've got to get Brexit done. And obviously that is the focus right now in this election. Let's get it done before Christmas, okay? Let's move the country on. And I think actually that'll empower not just politicians, but actually give a sense of hope and optimism to the British public and the entire country.
Just a final question. Could Boris get a landslide, do you think? 3 weeks out?
Look, I'm not even going to speculate about any of that because I come back to the point that, we're 3 weeks away. We're just continuing to campaign very humbly to work to, earn the trust and the votes of the British public. And as I've said, I just think when we listen, we're on the doorstep every single day. I think I'm going to 7 constituencies today. And I think it's overwhelming what we're hearing from the public. They want us to get on with the job. And I'm encouraging people to vote for us so that we can get on with the job, so that they can empower us through the election. We want to win, obviously, but it's only by voting Conservative can we even think about delivering for the country, getting Brexit done, hopefully getting it done by Christmas, and actually dealing with the people's priorities in the way in which we've been saying.
Priti Patel here in the Swan pub in Dudley. Thank you for talking to Chopper's Election podcast.
Thank you.
And thank you too to the Tory candidates in this seat, Mike Wood and Marco Longhi. Thank you to our producer, Elliot Lampitt. But most importantly of all, thank you to you for taking the time to listen. Why not subscribe to the podcast and make sure you never miss an episode? And if you want to get in touch, you can find us on Twitter @Brexit Broadcast or email us choppersbrexitpodcast@telegraph.co.uk. If you're all caught up on the show and twiddling your thumbs, go to telegraph.co.uk/chopper, where you can get 30 days free access to all of the Telegraph's best journalism on politics, business, lifestyle, sport, and everything else, completely free of charge. But always buy your copy of the Daily Telegraph. Until next time, from the Swan pub in Dudley, cheerio!
Hello, I'm Marianne Jones, and I'm the editor of the Telegraph magazine, which means I spend my week overseeing every page, from the front cover to hard-hitting news reports, columns and lifestyle features. We go to print weekly, so we have a little bit longer to craft our journalism, using our award-winning writers and fantastic art and photography teams. That means we can publish long-form pieces that really get to the heart of the story. Just recently, our cover interviews with Joaquin Phoenix and James Middleton made global headlines, while our writer Mick Brown's investigation into false memory syndrome won a major press award. And the fact of the matter is, we couldn't have done all of this without our subscribers. Without them, we just can't commission the stories you like reading or make podcasts like Choppers. Why not try out a 30-day subscription to The Telegraph completely free? Go to thetelegraph.co.uk/chopper.